Don't be afraid of speaking up. I think so many of our mental health issues come from the fact that we won't communicate and we don't speak up. Some direct but difficult communication is honestly a game changer in life. Don't be afraid to speak up. We'll pay for it one way or another.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. Today, I have the absolute honor of talking with Kati Morton, licensed marriage and family therapist, mental health educator, longtime creator, and the best-selling author of Are You Okay? And Traumatized. Her highly anticipated new book is called Why Do I Keep Doing This? And it digs straight into the patterns we all fall into, the emotional loops that we know aren't helping us, but that we keep repeating anyway. If you have followed Kati's work over the years, her YouTube community with over 1.5 million subscribers, her Ask Kati Anything podcast, her viral explanations of eldest daughter syndrome, or her grounded, compassionate presence on shows like Pod Meets World, then you know this. Kati has a rare ability to make complicated emotional experiences feel deeply relatable and understandable. In today's conversation, we explore how to rebuild trust in yourself after burnout or self-doubt, how to recognize when you're operating on autopilot, and what it actually takes to shift long-standing emotional habits. Kati brings both clinical wisdom and personal vulnerability to this topic, and it's such a relief to hear a therapist say, "Yep, I get stuck too, and here's how I find my way back." If you're someone who keeps oscillating between overfunctioning and collapse, this episode will meet you exactly where you are. Kati, welcome. It's such a pleasure to meet you because, as I mentioned before we turned the recording on, I actually found your videos I think 8 years ago when I was, in my healing journey, and found your videos and found them so helpful. So thank you so much for being here. And it's a real pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you too. It's so nice. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, for listeners who may be meeting you for the first time, could you share a little bit about what you do and who you help?
Yes, so I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I know that everybody always assumes then, oh, you only see couples and families. No, I'm really just a licensed therapist. It's just the way that our system works. That's the degree that I have, the license that I hold. My specialties lie in the treatment of eating disorders and self-injury work, but I've been creating content online since 2011, and nothing happens in a vacuum. So obviously we started with those videos, and then that moved into, depression, anxiety. What are the different types of therapy? Trauma, schizophrenia, anything in between. Like I've always told my audience, there's no dumb questions. You can always feel free to ask. This is a safe space. And my goal has always been just to empower people with the information they need to make good choices in their life for their mental health. Because my education shouldn't be, only in a city and only people who can pay a bunch of money. I feel like there's a lot of education that should be out there. And that was kind of how the Kati Morton channel came to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I got introduced to you as an educator and a content maker, um, And do you also have a private practice and see individuals and
I
like, what
actually
is that?
don't anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, we're happy to
yeah,
talk about that process.
yeah,
Over the years, it got more and more difficult as I traveled more and spoke, to speak and things like that. Um, I felt like it became a little unethical to keep up with my patients, at least for the standard that I hold myself to.
yeah,
And, very luckily, there were only about two patients that I had to, not like force out, but they wanted
right.
to stay.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
rest kind of graduated or were ready to take a different step and try a different treatment plan and things like that. And so
mhm,
it just kind of worked out that I slowly was able to let go of it. I still kind of miss it from time to time, but it's definitely tricky to do both all the things.
yeah. So your work basically now is as an educator, a speaker, uh,
Yes.
a content creator, as they
Exactly.
say.
Influencer, if you really want to say it that way.
Right. I prefer the term influencer.
Oh, I like it. Okay. Yes, we can call
Yes.
it that.
Um, and I'd love to I'd personally am super curious, and I'd also love to, for listeners to hear, how did you get here to be doing what you're doing now? Because this isn't something that just emerges straight out of college, right? It's like a whole path, and most of us who are doing anything in the realm of healing work, therapy, etcetera, it usually comes from our own personal growth journey too. So I'd love to hear just in whatever level of detail you feel like sharing today, what your path has been to getting here.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a funky one because for anybody who can't remember back to 2011 and or weren't around in 2011, um, YouTube wasn't what it is today. The reason that the
Mm,
channel got started is my boyfriend at the time, now husband, he he has a film production background, and he'd gone to this conference where they were talking about the power of YouTube. And at the time, you have to think like Instagram didn't exist, TikTok didn't exist, Snapchat didn't exist. The only things that existed were YouTube and Facebook did not have video or anything like that.
yeah,
This is like, the olden days. Um, Anyway, he had told me about the power of YouTube, and he'd come home from this thing, and I was telling him that, we never know who to refer out to. I worked at an eating disorder treatment center, like a residential center at the time. And I was like, man, my favorite one, Gwen Grab, shout out to Gwen Grab. She's one of my favorite therapists in the LA area. She was full. She wasn't taking new patients. And I was like, oh, I don't know who I'm going to refer them to. And I was very frustrated. And he's like, you're always saying people don't understand this. Why don't we educate about it online? Like I could film the videos. And like any therapist, I was like, that sounds weird. And I don't want to be on camera.
yeah,
It's not what I went to school for.
yeah,
And he was like, "No, no, people do this." And he started sending me videos from everything from like Jenna Marbles and Anna Akana, like kind of comedy, to like John and Hank Green and all the family vloggers, the Shay Carls of the world. And he was like, "No, people are doing all sorts of things. We can do this." And after some nudging for like 6 months or so, I was like, "Okay, okay, I'll film it with you, but you have to do everything else. Like, I don't know, I don't want to have to do anything else." And that's really like as funny as that sounds. That's how the Katie Morton channel was born.
yeah,
People need to know that at that point, like you didn't make money, you couldn't pick a thumbnail. It was just very different, like early stages, but the community was there. And that's what really kept me in it because I don't think we made a paycheck from YouTube for maybe a year. I don't know how
yeah,
long, a long time. And then it was probably like $5. This was never like a career choice. I'd like to think I had like the force, the ability to see into the future and like be very strategic. That's just not who I am, I guess. So it started off as that, and it's just kind of grown. And we never even really had like a viral hit. It was more just like the channel was growing, and I saw the impact it was having on people's lives. And it's always just been something that was incredibly fulfilling. And so I slowly, as many therapists, I worked many jobs. I worked in a hospital
yeah,
system, treatment center, and had my private practice part time. And I slowly was able to let go of those along the way, and able to write my first book in 2017, and then my second in 2021, and now my third is coming out. Yeah, it's been such a privilege. And speaking engagements at schools, I feel like it's just kind of grown organically in the way that it's supposed to. And it's also challenged me. I feel like it makes me a better therapist, a better person. I'm challenged all the time with different questions to do different research into things that maybe I wasn't taught, or also I went to school 15 years ago. So a lot of
yeah.
things have changed, right? And yeah, it's been an interesting, winding road as life is, but it's been incredibly rewarding and such a privilege.
Thanks so much for sharing that. totally fascinating for me to hear about this, and I very much remember YouTube back in the day. It was such a wild what it was like, "What even is this thing?" I remember I've had many different careers along the way, and, in the aughts, I guess, I was
Uh-huh.
working at a magazine, and the art director came to me and he was like, "There's this new thing. It's called YouTube." He's like, "Sounds like YouTube top." Like, that was the level of just not understanding what it was like, "What is this thing?"
Yeah,
So
it is a whole
yeah,
it was a whole different days. Technology has
yeah,
made things so interesting. Just the other day, I was, giving a workshop at this, patient advocacy event, and I was like, "Does anybody remember Tumblr?" I
yep,
loved Tumblr, and there are a couple hands in the audience.
yeah.
It's really changed over the years. It's been a wild ride, very interesting.
Something else I wanna ask you about
Mhm.
because, on this podcast, I talk a lot about visibility and fear of visibility. And, this is something that a lot of, I think a lot of folks who listen to this podcast do so because they identify with being sensitive people, which I am too. Um,
Same.
yep. And funny enough, I come from also a film and TV production background. After I worked
Mhm.
at a magazine, I worked in reality TV actually for 10 years as a video editor. So always behind the scenes. And then when you get trained as a therapist, you get all this training to like kind of cover up who you are and be very much behind the scenes. What was it like for you? You said you weren't immediately jumping at the idea of being on camera. How did you work through that? What was that process like? And what does it feel like for you nowadays?
Yeah, it's interesting, because, yeah, we are, like, behind the you're not supposed to give away anything about yourself, kind of. I mean, obviously, we're still human, and there's things that people are gonna like or not like just from looking at us, right? But I you'll notice over the years, my comfortability level.
Yeah.
I think in general, just like anything, like the first time you do something, you're going to be uncomfortable. You don't know what you're doing. It feels really awkward and you're not sure if you're doing it right, all of those things. And so the first, I don't even know, ton of videos, maybe the first year of filming, super uncomfortable. And I remember when people, like, I finally got collaborations, which is so exciting. Somebody will
Yeah.
finally collaborate because I heard no for a long time because people were like, I don't talk about that stuff on my channel.
Yeah.
um, mental health stigma and all that. When I finally got collaborations, then realized how uncomfortable it was to film around someone else because
Yeah.
it was just my husband then at the time, my husband and I doing this. I'm like, this is so weird. So there's definitely been a learning curve when it comes to that. And then for a while, I would like teleprompt different parts of the video because, like, oh, I want to make sure I mention this study, or oh, and that's its own learning curve of like reading something, but reading it in a compelling way. Definitely a lot of redos and things
Yeah.
like that. um, yeah, it's so different now because most people just film on their phone and it just feels a little more casual. I think I was definitely awkward. If you watch my first video and my video that came out like last Monday, very obviously I have aged and I'm different, but it's like also stark contrast of comfortability in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to say like, oh, I had these tools and I did X, Y, or Z, but it was more like trial and error and getting, building confidence through practice, through
Yeah.
doing it. And I think the one beautiful thing that I will say about, I mean, there's many beautiful things about the internet and social media and the way it connects us, but in general, I think the feedback I got from people, and to this day, I think people want authenticity more and more anyways. So they liked that it wasn't perfect and that I'm a little awkward and, oh, I feel awkward too. And I think all of that is very real. It's a human response. And so
Yeah.
I definitely still get nervous, before speaking engagements or if there's big audiences, it's like, oh my goodness. Um, I definitely get a lot of that still, but that's just normal human stuff. I think we're all a little nervous, and if you're awkward, just embrace it. I feel like lean into the cringe. It's okay.
Yeah.
N- we're all just doing this for the first time.
And it does connect us. It's something that we can all relate to. And what you're describing, that it wasn't some magic switch that you flipped to get comfortable, but it was like getting in the reps, the repetition. I come in my therapeutic realm of my career, I come from a background in helping folks recover from stress-related chronic pain, and so I talk a lot about graded exposure, and that's
Mhm.
something that very much applies with visibility too, just like everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it always I mean, I can say pretty much with 100% certainty that we always think it's gonna be way scarier, way worse than it
Yeah.
is. We build it up to be bigger in our head. So if anybody's thinking about it, just do it. It'll get better. It'll get easier, and you'll get, more confident, more comfortable.
Yep. Yeah. So you came out with your 3rd book
Mhm.
just recently, and it's called I love the title of it, "Why Do I Keep Doing This?"
Mhm.
I think that's a question most people have asked themselves at some point. Can you start by, like, sharing because that title could mean a lot of different things. What does the title actually mean? Where does it and what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, great question. The book kind of came out of a conversation that I'd had with my literary agent Jael, who I love very much, and my manager Linnea. We're like friends at this point. We've been working together for a really long time, and we were just talking about because I writing a book is really it's like a labor of love is the best way I can describe it. Um, and every time I write one, I'm like, I'm not going to write another one, and then
I've heard that from so many people.
I'll come back around. I don't have children, but I assume it's like
Yeah.
why people have more than one child. They're like, "I'm never doing this again," and then you, like, forget how hard it was. You're like, "I have to do it again." Um, so I'd come to them and was like, "I wanna do it again, and I have an idea, and here's what I wanna do." And the idea was to make it an eating disorder book 'cause that's my specialty, and I was like, "I wanna talk about control, I wanna talk about trauma, I wanna talk about body image, I wanna talk about all this stuff." And as we started talking about it more and more, we realized, or rather JL realized, like, hey, I think this is the book. I think it's less about eating disorder specifically. There is a little bit in there about that in one chapter. However, the whole book is really about control or the illusion of
Yeah.
control. Because
Yeah.
as I was sharing with them the different things I wanted to touch on in this book, they were like, yeah, 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 oh my God, me too. I do that too. And like, I try to be perfect and keep all these plates spinning. And then I feel overwhelmed. And we were just kind of building off each other as friends do, like, just having a catch up chat kind of. And I think it was, I had a couple ideas for titles. I'd have to look back. I probably have the doc still with a bunch of different titles. And why do I keep doing this? Just something I've always said to we all say it to ourselves from time to time, like, oh my God, why am I doing this again? Or like, whoa, and there's kind of that like eye roll or like, as me, I'm like, I'm a therapist. Geez, get it together. There's that judgment that we
Totally.
have internally. And so the book itself is about the patterns that keep us stuck and unhappy. So it's that illusion of control. That's kind of the thread that weaves through is like I talk about how I grew up and how that applied because I would confess that I am a recovering control freak and it comes out in different ways, but not in the ways that we often think. Like it comes out for me in people pleasing, in perfectionism, in feeling like I don't have a right to take up space, like trying to shrink myself.
Yeah.
It comes out in like not knowing who I am from time to time and feeling like I've like lost my identity in a relationship or in a job or in a situation. And then even I talk about my like own experience with depression and going through tough times and my difficulty with strong emotions, how scared I am of anger and of conflict, and how that's kind of a control thing too. And
Yeah.
it all it's probably my most personal book. So always get a little nervous, almost like a vulnerability hangover, where you're like, ugh, I hope it makes sense to people. I hope it resonates.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's really like my journey through my own therapeutic process, things that I know, things I don't know, things I struggle with, things that I've figured out a little bit. Um, yeah, and so that's really where how the book came to be, the idea was born and how it, you know, will be burst into this world.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for describing that to us. And there's just like so much I relate to and connect to in what you shared. I love that you said, sometimes you'll have the thought like, I'm a therapist. Like like I should be over this stuff already. I think anyone who's a therapist or anything related to that has had similar thoughts. And as you were talking about control and how it shows up for you, um, again, I can relate to, some of the things you named and also what comes up for me the most is getting stuck in loops of trying to control how I'm perceived,
Mhm.
which is funny, but also I think relevant because what I've been talking about most often on this podcast lately is like showing up authentically. And, like you were saying before, when, if your voice is shaky or you're nervous, it's actually something that people connect to and can relate to because it's so human. And all the same, like I talk about this stuff and then, I keep finding myself over and over again, like, oh, gosh, there's like I'm trying to control how I'm perceived again. And then I've got to like find my way back to that's something I can talk about and like find my way into connecting again instead of like walling up and controlling. And I'm curious like, how do you find your way back? Is it just sort of like a process of noticing? Do you have particular tools that you use to reconnect to yourself? How do you work through it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a couple, it depends on what it is. So,
Yeah.
first of all, I think depending on how it's showing up will kind of dictate what tools you use. So, for me, at least, like with people pleasing, as an example, because that's something I struggle with a lot, um, is recognizing, at least being aware of the ways it shows up. So, people pleasing in my life can show up as over apologizing, just like saying sorry for essentially no reason. Like, I'm not sorry. I don't know why I'm saying it.
Yeah.
I will say yes when I mean no to
Yeah.
different things. I will try to control someone else's emotional state. And those are probably the top. I'm sure there's more because it feels like whack-a-mole. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, there it is again. Um, but so those are the ways it shows up for me. So part of it's just awareness. So getting curious, not judgmental about how it shows up for you. So if you know, like in your case, it's like, I don't want to be perceived this way. I'm trying to control the way that people view me. And I'm doing that form of manipulation, which all people please is manipulation too. We give
Yeah.
manipulation a bad rep. It's very common, something that we all do. But when you're doing that, right, you have to recognize, does it show up in the fact that like I might, I don't know, practice over and over the questions that I have, or record my voice and then listen back 1,000 times, or worry about how I'm dressed or if it's appropriate or whatever, like however it might show up depending on the situation. Once we kind of know those indicators, let's call them, then we can try to take action. Meaning that, like, for me, it's I'm over apologizing. So my therapist gave me homework many years ago and was like, I want you to keep track. It wasn't stop. She's just like, I want you to keep track. It's essentially like the cognitive behavioral therapy tool of like, notice how you talk to yourself and start writing it down. And you're
Yeah.
like, wow, I talk a lot of trash. Right. So for this, she's like, notice how many times. And I did not keep a good number, but I know it was way too many and I was embarrassed. And then she was like, well, then consider before you say sorry, what are you sorry for? So then we take steps toward changing the behavior. Because I think for a lot of us, myself included, when we look at the things we don't like, it's easy to be like, well, I just want to stop doing that. Like I
Yeah.
get questions all the time.
Totally.
How do I stop doing this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there are layers, there are steps to it. Because if we try to jump to the just stopping, we're gonna fail, not because we don't know how or because we're human and we have this pattern of behavior. You can't just break a pattern overnight.
Yeah.
We want to think we can, but that's not sustainable. We might be able to hold out for a little bit, but it'll come right back around. So it's kind of these layers and recognizing what those are for you. Like maybe instead of you know, changing 5,000 times before this big event, we give ourselves a time limit, or we do this one thing and then we move on. So it's not all or nothing, but it's definitely a little bit more managed, or quote unquote controlled, to use our word.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to say that there's like a one size fits all, or like, oh, if you feel like control is manifesting itself in your life in a ton of different ways, my I guess the most universal first step is just starting to notice. Start to pay attention to how it shows up. And you will know it's a control mechanism when you feel anxious, irritable, or agitated in some way and you don't really know why.
Yeah.
That's a good indicator for me personally, and probably for many people out there, that we're trying to control something.
Yeah. I love that. Um, and I love that. I really love that we're talking about how as as practitioners or educators or folks who talk about this stuff, it's it's not as though we're like talking from some platform of like, I've gotten over it. Now this is how you can fix yourself, right?
Yeah.
And there are a fair number of listeners in this audience who also are therapists or they're coaches or practitioners or they might not even be in those fields, but they're leaders in their fields. And a thing that I hear people ask a lot is like, how can I possibly coach others or be a therapist to others or lead others if I'm still struggling with the thing that they're struggling with? And I know I have my response to that, but I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple pieces to it, right? If we're really suffering and struggling in a certain area, let's say, I don't know, let's say I have a really deep past of trauma. Let's say I had like sexual abuse as a child. Then if I have patients who come in with that and I haven't quite worked through my own ish just yet, there's no shame in referring out. It's a great resource as a therapist. Like I never really felt like I understood autism in a big way. And it's a very niche and specialized thing. And so I would always refer out. That's okay. I can't know
Right.
everything. No one's going to shame you for not knowing everything. There'd be no other job out there where they'd be like, oh, you don't, as a sales rep, you don't understand what they're doing in, I don't know, in the accounting wing. That would never be a thing. And therapy is no different. No one expects you to know everything. So there's that piece that, like, if it is too close to home, where we think that countertransference could enter into the experience, for people who aren't familiar with the term, it's essentially if your patient comes in and, as they usually do, treat you like someone in their life in a certain way, and we don't have the bandwidth or the resilience or the wherewithal to hold the space for them. Instead, we react back
Right.
badly, usually if we that's when we know we need to refer out. I feel like that's an indicator that that's just, we're not the right fit. So there's that piece. And I think that's really important. And I do my best to keep my ego in check where I don't need to save everybody. I can't help everybody, but that doesn't mean I'm not a good therapist. Okay. So everybody should hopefully feel that way. So there's
Right.
that. But then the second piece, and I think the more valuable and usually more usual situation is the fact that we have worked through our stuff at least most of the way, enough that it doesn't impact our ability to hold space, and it makes us better. I think there's something first of all, there I can personally say that I would never want to see a therapist who hadn't been in therapy themselves.
Yeah.
Because if
I
you don't
was
know what it's like, e
I just have to say, I was so shocked when I went to grad school to become a therapist that it was not a requirement, and that in fact, plenty of classmates had said they'd never been in therapy.
it's like,
It
why do
blew
you
my
want to be a
mind.
therapist? Do you even know what it's like?
Exactly. I was just I mean, I feel like I'm throwing shade by saying that, but it just was very surprising to me.
No, I even have a good friend, her husband's a psychiatrist, and he's never been in therapy, and he's like, "I'd be afraid
Whoa.
I'd come unraveled," and I'm like, "That's the
What?
point.
Yeah.
That's the point."
Wow. Wow. I
And
feel like
yeah,
listeners need to know this, because
and you can ask. You can't
you
ask
can
them what their therapy was
yeah.
about, but you can say, "Have you yourself been in therapy?"
Yes.
And because I just think it's really important to know what it's like to be the patient or the client or whatever you want to call them. It's important to know what
Yeah.
it's like to show up in a stranger's waiting room and poke a button that lights up something and then go tell them the things you don't tell anybody and cry to a stranger and go through a whole box of tissues. You need to know what that's like.
And to
And
be willing to allow yourself to unravel, because how the heck can someone else feel safe unraveling, which is part of like the necessary process of growth.
yeah.
If yeah, if the person holding the space doesn't want to let themselves unravel.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think there's something that comes with like doing your own personal work to be able to sit quietly and allow for that to happen,
Yeah.
versus maybe feeling anxious or feeling like you need to fix it or I don't know, whatever issues that any human could have. I feel like as therapists we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard where we do the work ourselves too.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really the answer. If we're doing our work and we're in therapy as we should be, then there is no problem with having your own stuff. Every human on this earth has their own stuff, some greater or may feel heavier than others, but this is not a comparison game. We all have our own stuff and it makes us better humans. It makes us better therapists. And I feel like in the process of doing my own work, it's made me, and even being online and like educating and learning more, it's made me a better therapist in the way that I think about things. And I consider different viewpoints because I get a lot of feedback, right? I get a ton of questions. And so I'm like, oh, I should probably talk about it this way because I know they're going to wonder about that. And I
Yeah.
think in general, it's experience and it's valuable and it's important. We don't have to tell them about it, but we then might know the right questions to ask.
Yeah. Um, Now that you're not seeing clients and you're more focused on educating, speaking, writing, how do you like keep your fingers in it, so to speak? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes. I
Yeah.
It's tricky and I miss it sometimes for that reason. I think there is something really, I don't know, really great about sharing space with people. I did for a long time run these like little groups kind of through Patreon where my
Yeah.
members of my community would hang out and we would chitty chat almost like group therapy, to ask
Yeah.
them questions and they would kind of ping pong around. I've done stuff like that. I also keep in touch with a lot of my colleagues still and offer insights and support where I can.
Yeah.
And I for before I moved to Texas, so that would have been 2021. So until then, I was part of this journal club with other psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, social workers, and we would kind of throw around our difficult cases and try to get some insight. And it was kind of like a supervision group, for lack of a better term. And that really helped as well because I stayed in it even though I didn't have patients, just because it was really helpful for me to still be, and they allowed for that, for me
Yeah.
to be a part of that. So it is tricky. Um, it's I wouldn't say that it's the same, that I'm as sharp as I probably was when I was seeing patients. I don't know if that's possible. It's just different. I guess I have a different view now. But yeah, I definitely still read all the things and research all the things as much as I can, just like any therapist would. Um, yeah, just as much as I can anecdotally and through, different avenues to stay in touch with it, but I do miss it.
A quick pause here because I want to invite you into something that I think could shift the way you feel about showing up. If you're a sensitive creative or entrepreneur, and the idea of being really seen and heard brings up fear, resistance, or that, oh no, not me feeling, you are in good company. My free visibility workshop, Let Yourself Be Seen, is all about making visibility feel safe to your nervous system and true to you. We'll explore how to work with fear as a doorway into more authentic self expression so you can share the work that matters most to you without pushing, pretending, or burning out. You can save your spot or catch the replay at annaholtzman.com/be seen. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. There's a question I want to ask because it's something that is just very relevant to this podcast audience and to lots of the clients that I work with. A pattern that I see and hear about a lot is folks who are sensitive, who care a lot, who are like really passionate about what they do. And then they find themselves in this cycle, why do I keep doing this cycle of overfunctioning and then burnout and overfunctioning and burnout? And it just feels like such a sticky, why do I keep doing this cycle that feels very hard to break. I'm curious if this is something that you've worked with, you've seen, you have um, some wisdom to share on.
Yes, there's a bunch of my book about the highly sensitive person because I
Yeah.
am that person too. There's a beautiful book by Elaine Aron is her name. It's called The Highly Sensitive Person. It's
Yes.
a light blue book. I encourage everybody to pick it up. It's a great read and also incredibly insightful. I think for those of us who are extra empathic, extra sensitive, it is our superpower. I believe it makes me a better wife, a better friend, and a better therapist for sure. But it has to come, I always think of it like bumper bowling. It has to have bumpers. Like you have to have those boundaries or those rules and these can't be breakable. I don't know if I mentioned this in the book. I'd have to reread that chapter because it's been a while, but
Yeah.
there's personally, the things that have helped me the most is promises that I keep to myself. And the reason I say it that way is because when we are highly sensitive, when we overgive and we burn out, and we overgive and burn out and overgive and burn out over and over, the person that's suffering is us. And that usually means that when it comes to the things that we need and the things that we want, they are not a priority.
Yeah.
And I struggle with this. I did that work. I don't know if you've heard of the workbook, The Artist's Way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have
Oh,
got it on the bookshelf right behind
I
me.
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. And part of this workbook that you work on for 12 weeks, I think it is each week you're supposed to take yourself on an artist date. And that
Yes,
means you
that's my
take,
favorite part. I love
and it
that.
was
Yeah.
so hard for me. And
Yeah.
it was a wake up call to what we're talking about, the fact that like essentially when you overgive and you burn out, what I can tell you with pretty much 100% certainty is that you're not giving to yourself enough. And you might be like, but I do, it's not enough because we're burning out. So it's not enough. And the guilt that can come along with that and the feelings of like, but I'm letting somebody down again is just another indicator for me at least is like where I'm people pleasing.
Mhm.
And so again, it's just that curiosity. How is it showing up? And so my biggest encouragement for highly sensitive folks out there is to notice. We notice first, right? We don't judge, we don't make changes, we just notice. Notice when you are tired and you say yes anyway. Notice when you take on more than your fair share. We're not here to keep a rolling, list, but just notice if like, hey, Susie at work never does as much as I'm doing and she's put the same pay level. Or, hey, my partner doesn't really do the laundry as often. I feel like I'm always doing the laundry. Is there a switch out for that? Then they do always do the dishes or they always cleaning and vacuuming? What's the breakdown of home life chores? And again, we're not keeping a tally, but we are at least being aware of the fact of when we do more than our fair share, because that's what ends up overwhelming us. And also, if you are highly sensitive, I think there's things that you need to know more about yourself, like our overhead lights overstimulating and maxing out, or loud environments with a lot of people super draining. Like usually for those of us who are like this, we'd say, yes, I get really burnt out in those types of situations. And so we need to like when I go to things like a big conference, I have to go up to my room for a little bit and like, oh, sit in the silence, like close my eyes for a little bit and be like, recharge. I
Yeah.
don't book myself back to back to back. And so there's just a few things to kind of consider when we find ourselves in that HSP land or highly sensitive person land where we need to be aware of our own energy levels and what we're doing so that then we can put in some of those bumpers so that we don't
Yeah.
completely burn out.
Oh, yeah. I totally relate to the, like, when you're at an event. I've learned that I have a 3-hour, social battery.
That's
It's
great
exactly
information
3
to
hours.
know.
It's really, really helpful to know because I know that if I don't have some kind of solo time recharge, to break up, between the next 3 hours, shit's gonna hit the fan. I'm gonna have a
Yes.
meltdown.
Same, and I think
Yeah,
I'm about 3 to 4 hours as well. I feel like that's
yeah.
I mean, and this is like active social time, right? If I'm just sitting in the
Mhm.
audience and I'm listening, that's one thing, but
Yeah.
to engage and to stay focused, that's a lot of time to think, and to feel off of other people or
Mhm.
it's a lot to navigate, and especially if your
Yeah.
fear of being perceived, you wanna control that, you're very on,
Oh, yeah.
and to turn it on is such an extra oomph of energy, and I think a lot of us do it without realizing, and women in general, not to say that we're all the same, but I think generally speaking, we tend to do more, like feel more responsible. Like one of my friends just posted on LinkedIn that she forgot the deadline for signing up one of her children for soccer. And I was
Mhm.
like, you have a husband. He forgot it too, but you're taking 100% ownership. And because she felt so bad because she'd missed that deadline, she actually signed up to be the coach because that was the
Oh
only
my
way to get her
gosh.
child into it. And he
Oh,
really
yeah.
was mad and he was very sad about it and missing it. And it just, again, but it ended up being that's what she's writing about. It
Yeah.
was like one of the best things she needed to get her
Oh,
out of
cool.
work and stuff. But, anyways, all that to say that like we do need to figure out what our battery life is, how often we need to recharge it, And then finding kind ways to communicate that, because something that's a difficult thing for an HSP is any potential conflict and actually communicating a need and holding to it. You don't have to give a TED talk about why you have to walk away or why I need to step out. I think in general, the simpler the better, and find some ways that feel authentic to you. Something like, it's been a long day of socializing. I'm going to pop up to my room. I'll be right back. I'll text you when I'm heading down. That's not, no one would be offended by that, but we worry so much about how people take it and what that may feel like for them.
Yeah, this is all just making me think of another thing that I feel like is so, uh, commonly tricky for HSPs is the habit or just that really sticky pattern of in social dynamics becoming the listener and the space holder. And, I've heard this from a lot of folks and have gone through periods of this myself where, like, just wanting to avoid social, um, engagements altogether because it just feels so impossible to break that pattern of being the space holder, the listener, and then, not feeling like it's comfortable or allowed or just, like, being so used to that pattern that you simply can't be the one who's taking up space.
Yes, why, and we always I find myself in that situation all the time. I used to before I like, everybody knows I'm a therapist now, but I used to not tell people I was a therapist. I used to just say I was in marketing because people don't
Yeah,
really ask questions. And but people, when they find you're a therapist, always, well, not always, but I feel like every scenario, every situation, every big event, someone will want to tell me their life story
yeah,
or have ask me questions about somebody they know. Yeah, and it's hard to walk away.
yeah,
My husband's very good at that, where he'll see it and he'll come over and be like, "Katie, I really need to introduce you to someone. She'll be back, blah blah," and he just breaks the conversation.
yes.
That's helpful. Have a partner in crime. Um, but yes, and then we feel like we're responsible. Sometimes I've gotten better. I'm not perfect, but I have gotten better at it's like wrapping it up quick. It's
Mhm.
like you're on TV and you're getting the wrap up, like finish it up.
Yeah,
And I will say something to the effect of like, wow, that sounds really difficult. If you need me to give you some referrals to a therapist, I'm happy to do so. I have to go meet my friend really quick. It's lovely to meet you. It's just a nice
yeah,
because you're not invalidating, you're not minimizing, you're offering a resource and you're getting yourself out of there, because I don't know about you, but I don't really go to cocktail parties to tell you if your child has autism or if your
right.
ADHD has gone undiagnosed. That's like I'm not the what, or like
Yeah,
if your mom's a narcissist, like it's not the time. And I can't have those conversations then. But I understand it just
yeah,
shows that we need more mental health care out there. We need more people talking about it. But yeah, there's a time and a place.
yeah, and it's also so important to seek out the people who can have reciprocal conversations with you because they do exist, they're out there, and it
Mhm.
might take a little bit more work to seek them out sometimes.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Um, I'm just laughing because I recently decided, "You know what? I'm gonna find a new person to cut my hair because 'cause I'd been going to someone for a while
That's
who.
so hard. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, yeah, this person, lovely person, but they found out that I was a therapist on the first and they had just started going to therapy, and our sessions became, like, them just unloading to me, and I was like, "I want the haircutting experience to be more like my therapy session,
Right? Isn't this where
if
I
anything."
vent and we chitty chat and yeah.
Yeah, where I just kind of, like, zone out.
Yep.
Yeah. We are getting to that time in our conversation where I'm going to wind us down into the final three questions that I always ask folks on this podcast. And the first of those is if there is a soapbox message that you feel like is infused into everything that you speak, teach, write these days at this particular point in your evolution, what would that message be?
Hmm. I mean, there's so many. I guess I guess in my soapbox, this would be something that I could like talk about forever and really get like oof about is that don't be afraid of speaking up. I think so many of our mental health issues come from the fact that we won't communicate. and we don't speak up. I can't tell you the number of patients and clients over the years, friends, family, who've created these, even myself, I'm not leaving myself out of this, by the way, who we get ourselves in these situations that are so unfortunate and feel so heavy and feels like we can't find our way out. And it could have all been solved through a clear and direct communication about, like, I don't like that you said that. That really hurt my feelings, or I don't want to go there. I did it last year and I wish I hadn't. Some direct but difficult communication is honestly a game changer in life. Don't be afraid to speak up. We'll pay for it one way or another.
Yeah. I co-sign that so enthusiastically. I think it can feel to certain people so dangerous to our nervous
Mhm.
system perceives it as dangerous to speak up, but it is the path to greater safety on the other side, the necessary path.
100%. Yes, and it ensures that I mean, it's such a good lesson for life in general, speaking up for yourself, but it also ensures that you're living authentically. And if we
Yes.
don't, again, we will wake up in 10 years and be like, what is this life? And I don't like anything. I don't like anybody. And what am I doing? You think like these small choices aren't big deals, but they are. They add up to a life. And you have every right to say, like, no, and this isn't good. And please be nicer to me, or that hurt my feelings, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, the next question is for the listener who is hearing this conversation and they are feeling inspired by some of what you're putting down, they're picking it up and maybe thinking of picking up your book and they're they're noticing like, yeah, there are some of these patterns that I keep doing and I would like to start becoming more aware and shifting things. But they're also maybe feeling overwhelmed and kind of like, "Oh my gosh, if I enter this path, there's just like so many directions I could go, so many things to do. I don't even know where to start." What words of encouragement would you have to that listener?
Everything always feels overwhelming at the beginning. Just like anything, if we haven't done it before, and this is our first life, right? It's our first time doing this thing. So we're all having new experiences each and every day. Don't lose hope. My first advice to you, if you don't know where to start, you're feeling like life is overwhelming, everything feels like too much. You feel like you're keeping all these plates spinning, you're not sure what to do. Get some paper and start journaling. And I want you to journal in the artist way I learned. And I still say this to my audience, and I'll say it again here. Journal like no one's going to read it back, because you're not. It doesn't have to make sense or be cohesive. You're not writing a story, you're just venting. It doesn't have to be spelled correctly, and it doesn't even have to be legible. I want you just to start getting some of the stuff out, because I feel like in general we can feel so like full of thoughts, feelings, experiences, things we haven't verbalized. And it could be from our childhood all the way till now. And we're just like busting at the seams. Give yourself a way, an outlet, a way out, a way to get that out. Because obviously, get starting therapy, it takes time. We have to call them, we have to see if we like them, and that can feel overwhelming. This is just start getting it out. And if you want to rip it up or burn it after, you don't have to keep it. I just want you to feel like you can get it out of your head and your body.
Yeah. I feel like just start is
Hmm.
you can't go wrong.
Nope.
And finally, where can folks connect with you, learn more about your work, pick up your book, all that good stuff?
Yeah, all of my social media is Kati Morton. That's Katimorton. That's, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I have a podcast called Ask Katie Anything, where I interview other specialists, other creators, as well as answer questions, hence the name. And my book, Why Do I Keep Doing This, is available anywhere you buy books. And if money is tight, ask your local library. They have great resources there as well. There's also an audiobook that's done by me if you prefer it that way. But yeah, you can get the book anywhere, and I hope that you love it and it feels like me. That's my goal.
Thank you so, so much, Katie. And I'll, of course, share all those links in the show notes so folks can find them easily so they can learn more about you, pick up your book. And thank you so much for being here with me and with this audience. It's great to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.